I think we can just get going. So, yay, today I don't have to present. So, thank you, Jessica, very much. Jessica's an amazing PA faculty member at Rutgers, at the Rutgers program, who I kind of geeked out with at PAEA last year over AI. And she has graciously accepted, with all the offhanded comments she makes to me about the cool GPTs that she's made. She's going to teach me and the rest of us about custom GPTs and the kinds of things you can do with them and how to make them. So, without further ado, Jessica, go ahead.
Well, that's really nice. And I'm going to be super humble and say I think we all are capable of doing all this. And, I learned so much from David. He presented a few weeks ago. Was it a few weeks ago now? I can't remember. I feel like time's just flying through. But I really want to give everybody kind of a leg up on how to create these because I think they're going to be really helpful. I'll kind of show you an example of one that I created that is a virtual SP that hopefully, in the future everybody can start using. I will put a disclaimer out there that you do need the paid version for this, which is a rate limiting step when using some of this AI stuff. So what I really want to do is really make this a working kind of learning atmosphere for us. If you do have a chat GPT that's paid, I'd recommend like opening it up and kind of like trying to follow step by step to kind of just learn how to use it. And like I was saying before, if you weren't here before, I did create a PowerPoint just kind of giving you the step out by step procedures on how to build a GPT. Um, if in the future you do end up getting an institutional license or decide to, take the plunge and just purchase it yourself. So I'm just going to share my screen now and feel free to ask questions in between. This is really just working through it, learning, and any kind of questions. The chat GPT we're going to build today is how to um, help with remediation and build questions to teach your students on how to build pants review questions, especially in areas that they might be a little weaker in to kind of help them prepare for their boards. Sounds good? Cool. All right, so let me get sharing here. All right, so you're going to log into ChatGPT, and when I log in, I do have a paid subscription. So here's that plus that you see. I'm just going to open up another screen here. Excuse me, guys. Sorry. Because I want to see people if they have questions. There you go. So when you enter ChatGPT, I'm sure a lot of you have played around with this. You'll see here, these are all the ChatGPTs I've built, building, compliance for RPA compliance, admissions, some courses I'm a part of. The VSP that I've built is difficult news, the communication with difficult news. I'll give you a quick little briefing on how this works. So this GPT, what I've built is I created a virtual patient where my students need to communicate with a patient and express to them that they have now been diagnosed with cancer. And it teaches them how to have difficult conversations and how to really get the patient to feel comfortable with the diagnosis, the next steps of treatment, and teach our students to really step outside their comfort zone because that is a very difficult conversation to have. So, for example, I put all the back end, I built this GPT. So this is voice mode. Hey, Mr. Smith, how are you? Thank you for coming into for your visit today. How have you been feeling since your last biopsy?
Hey, I've been trying to stay calm, but honestly, it's been rough. I've just been waiting and thinking the worst. I can't sleep. My stomach's in knots all the time. I keep wondering what they're going to tell me. What if it's bad?
Yeah, I completely understand how this can be a really troubling time for you. And I know that, undergoing a biopsy is an issue. And I know that the waiting is really rough. So, our relationship is built on that we're very frank with each other. So I do want to let you know that you were diagnosed positive for pancreatic cancer.
Blinking slowly, then looks away. So it is cancer? I mean, are you sure? Are you really sure about that? I didn't think it would actually be that. It felt like maybe it could have been something else.
Yeah, the pathologist, when they assess this, it's pretty certain of what the diagnosis is. What are you feeling right now in terms of this diagnosis? What are your first thoughts?
I don't even know what to think. It's like everything just dropped out from under me. I mean, cancer, that's serious, right? Like how bad is this? What does this even mean for me? Am I going to die from this?
And this will go on in the conversation. And what you'll see here is that there's an entire outline of what is said in conversational, and then at the end, the student will be triggered to say, let's set you up for an appointment. And then it provides you feedback on what you did right, areas we can improve on and how you can communicate a little bit better. Once our student goes through this, there's an OSCE at the end that's similar so that they can have an actual standardized patient. So these are ways that ChatGPT, these bots can really help. So that's just one way that I build my chatbot, and there's more that I've built. And any questions? I know this is like so far.
So
One
Jessica,
for you,
when you say
Jessica.
you built the chatbot, um, so obviously you gave it context.
Mhm.
It's going to be able to generate somewhat of its own content, all of its own. What did you actually program into it other than context for it?
So what this was programmed, it had several visits put into it, an HPI, follow-up
Mhm.
visits, and then I put in information as to past medical history. I also provided characteristics that was put into this. I did say at one point, I want you at least to be combative one time during this interaction so that the student can kind of understand, how to drive that kind of conversation when a patient becomes a little combative. Or I
Mhm.
also put at this time just act there and be silent so that the student can feel a little uncomfortable in that silence because sometimes
Mhm.
that silence can be very uncomfortable. So all those things were put in there.
So it's just like, are you uploading multiple documentations
Yeah.
or right?
Yes. So let's see how I did this. So when you're going to build your own chatbot, you're going to go to my GPTs.
Mhm.
Okay. And then you're going to go create a custom version. So when you create a custom version, you can edit it and then you can
Mhm.
preview it. You can add documents to it. So the way I
Yeah.
built the last GPT was I had a full H&P. I uploaded it. I gave instructions on how this patient should be interacting with the student.
Mhm.
I also input characteristics that I want it to be. I said show different emotions, from happy to sad to confusion, can be a variety. And I also put at any time they can be male, female. It can
Nice.
change up every interaction. I don't want it to be the same. I want it to be a different interaction every time so that each student has a different viewpoint with whoever the VSP is at that time.
Okay.
And
And
Jessica.
then
Oh no, you go ahead, you.
I was just going to ask, like, okay, so now that you've done that, and I can see that the interaction is extremely, uh, I would say, very relevant. How do you then provide the feedback to the student and be able to give, I guess, if you're using it for an OSCE, how do you determine some kind of grading for that
So
particular interaction?
So for the VSP interaction, we have a rubric that we built.
Okay.
So based off that rubric, that's what we follow for the VSP interaction. So then when
Mhm.
they have their OSCE with the SP, we have the same rubric and we follow that rubric to see how they did in comparison, if there was any kind of improvement and feeling that comfort level with having a difficult conversation.
Right.
Because what
Okay.
the
Yeah,
chatbot
that makes
does
sense.
at the end of
Yeah.
the conversation, the chatbot, once you say, thank you, listen, Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith, thank you very much. What we're going to do is we're going to set you up with a medical oncologist and we'll get you started on that appointment, which then triggers the chatbot to say, okay, thank you. And then it provides that feedback.
Right. Okay, cool. I like it.
One quick question I had for you, Jessica. So I know you have to have, and I have 3 more weeks until my students are done with didactic, and then I can pay for an AI. I made myself that promise. So, um, basically my question for you is you have to have the paid subscription to make the custom GPTs. But then can you make them open so that your students can access them without having paid versions, or they have to have a paid version as well to use it?
So this is the problem. No, they need to have a paid version to have unlimited interactions. It cuts them at about 20 interactions.
Okay.
So what we're doing is piloting it so that we can at least build a baseline, validate our rubric, so that we can then come to the school and say, listen, we need you to finance this. Because this is a great way for our students to be able to actually practice this, because this is not something that you can easily practice in clinical medicine. If if they don't go prepared for this clinical medicine, they're just going to feel very like uncomfortable, and we want them to feel a little bit more comfortable having these conversations. And this conversation can be changed into anything. It could even be behavior change. It can be having difficult conversations with family members, anything like that. It just all pertains to you changing what the backstory is, the narrative. So I promised you how to use a GPT to kind of help you with remediation for your students and help them with kind of studying. But I wanted to show you what the potential for these GPTs can be in the future, especially for students who you feel are just having a hard time gathering a history and really asking questions appropriately. So what you're going to do is, again, you do need the paid version. You'll come in and create your own custom GPT. There's a way to I do this manually, and I say you can create, let's put in here, walk me through generating. You can do that, and I'll walk you through on how to generate this GPT. Once you're used to it, you really don't need the walkthrough. You kind of already know what steps you need to take. So what you'll do next is, I guess it takes a little bit of time. Think about, in the meantime, what you want to call this GPT. What kind of GPT do you want? Do you want it to be formal, friendly? Do you want it to be knowledgeable? What kind of behavior do you want? These are all things that, you should be thinking as you're building this, so that you can really get all the aspects that are necessary. So what do you want to do? So let's see, we're going to call this. I guess. We're going to give it some parameters. What are some of the parameters that you guys would want to see in preparing your students for the PANCE and generating questions? What kind of questions do we want to build? Like, what are the question structures, right? You want to see the type of questions are multiple choice, correct? Multiple choice. So we're going to say, write me what's our question structure? A multiple choice.
Got 5 distractors, right?
Yeah. What kind of distractors do we want? Distractors, do we want 1 or 2 distractors?
So we can use some of the work that comes out of the psychometricians at NCCPA, right? So they're using MCQs, using 5 options. All are plausible, but only one is correct.
Yeah, one
Has a
best
stem
answer.
that leads
Yep.
into it.
Correct. We want answers with rationale as to why the questions are correct and why they're not correct. And then we want it to align with the NCCPA blueprint. So what you can do is I can go online and get the NCCPA blueprint and actually upload it into this GPT. So when we download the PANCE blueprint, it can be an attached file. So what I'll do is I'll also attach that here. Okay, so you can attach, I believe it's up to 10 to 11 documents at a time into the chat GPT. So you could even copy and paste a question and say, use this as an example. Okay.
And Jess,
So
do you know if these are limited by, is it limited by, do you know, like the context or of RAG that you can add? So like, is it by number of documents or amount of text? Like, have you found that PDFs work better than Word documents or things like that? Or is it number of files? Do you know what the limiting step is on what you can add for context?
I've never had an issue with variability between whether PDF or Word. So if anybody else has, let me know. As long as I think it just cuts you
No.
off at a certain amount of documents.
It's a
I found
max of 20 documents.
max of
No.
20. So
Oh, okay.
so that's something that you can, input. It could be an Excel file. I've used Excel files. I've used PDFs, a Word, all of those things to do that in here. Okay. So let's say we want an example of a question, right? So we'll put this in for now and it'll come up with some more knowledge. It's going to look through everything we said. So this is what it comes back with. So I also like putting an example so that it can kind of look at the structure of what a question looks like. So if you guys want to take a look at the question, let me know if you have any thoughts on how you'd like to improve it.
No, it looks appropriate.
So
As much as I can read it anyway.
sorry, should I make it larger?
That's okay. No, it's all right. Don't worry about it.
And you want to explain to it, this is an example question. Model this for how we want to write questions. Oh, I'm sorry. I see the chat's hopping. I'm trying to, let me open that chat too. Okay, so this is a sample question based off the question I added. This is what it provides, right? So here's your example, the question we provided it. Oh, sorry about that. Here, your multiple choice. We're going to get a multiple choice A through E. We're going to highlight the correct answer as to why and then provide reasoning and then make sure it's concise, right? So what else do we want it to generate? It's going to ask you more questions every time until you're satisfied with what the chatbot gives. The great thing with this is that, all right, I really don't know if this is all I want. Let me test it out. Write 3 questions based on cardiology. So let's see what it comes out with. So what was one of the things that didn't come back with on this prep? It didn't give us the answers. It didn't
Didn't
even
give us
give us the
five. Yeah, didn't give us
rationale,
five.
right? It didn't give us what we asked it to.
Didn't give it five. Yeah.
So it doesn't always do it right away. So you have to constantly be checking on it and asking to make sure, hey, don't forget this.
Jessica, is there a chance that it is waiting for you to select an answer before it does that?
No, it wasn't, because that's not what the instruction was.
Okay.
Because there's no way to really select what the answer is. So there's no way. So now say a student had this, the student say could then in fact say ask what are the answers and provide the rationale behind it.
Yeah, so then are you able to just give it the feedback and say, hey, you should do the questions one at a time, make sure there's 5 answer choices,
Correct.
make the student provide an answer before giving the rationale, and congratulate them if it's right, or encourage them if it's wrong, and then explain why, right? Like then you can just basically iteratively work with the writer to perfect your GPT. Is that how you kind of build it?
Exactly.
So it's
So one
building
thing
its
that,
own, so it's kind of building its own prompt in the
correct.
system.
And
That's amazing.
yeah, and as you're doing this, one thing that we forgot to do, and it's the crucial step, is actually telling this GPT what it actually is. So you always want to identify it when I'm doing things for that's PA based. You are a PA, you're an expert in the PA field, you're an educator, you provide high quality practice questions that model the pants, right? So you want similar questions as well as making sure it kind of mimics end of rotation exams so that students feel comfortable with the questions. So like that's something that you want to do when you start with the chatbot, because now you're giving it a role. It knows what its identity is. Um, and then you want to make sure that they're providing high quality, and you want to always put in pants, EORs, things that are specific to what your question should be coming out of. So let's do that part.
While it's working, I'm curious, you've prompted it to base it on pants and end of rotation exam questions. What bank of questions is it accessing? Is that a bank of questions you've provided?
No, so it's generating it all on its own from what it's learned from other models. So it's really generating completely new questions, maybe mimicking a little bit, but not much.
And I love Dave's suggestion in the chat that you can feed it the NCCPA test writing workshop. He put a link in there for basically the exam writing guidelines from
Absolutely,
NCCPA.
you can. You really can do that. So here's
It's a
the,
great
right? So
idea.
let's do that. Let's download it. Let's put it into our chatbot.
I have a question. If
Yes.
you're using end of rotation examinations, what source are you using? Because PAEA end of rotation examinations, no one's ever really seen what they look like. So how does it know what to pull from?
So it pulls out whatever's out there on the internet. There's nothing that it doesn't go to a specific source. If anybody knows where any want to add, it doesn't have any kind of source. I have referenced current where I say, please utilize the most up-to-date current. And because I feel like current's probably out there just so that it has a reference. But for the most part, there's nothing that it's specifically referencing.
Just the inherent knowledge within the system, or the inherent information, I should say. Word association, right?
Mm-hmm. So here's
Oh,
what, go ahead, sorry.
that's one other question I had, Jessica. So when it's doing this, so with the different systems, like this runs under, so with running under the different models. So if it's running under 4.0, will the GPT is it actively interacting, like searching the internet like 4.0 under standard use would do? Or
Mm-hmm.
like the GPTs have the same abilities as the model they run inside of?
So I don't see, let me see if there's additional settings.
Yeah, you've
I
got
think
it. You've got check the website, web
yeah,
search already checked.
yeah, there you go, there. And
Oh yeah,
then,
perfect.
so here it is. I know it's like it's in here. So here's what it has checked off already.
That's amazing.
Okay, and if you ever want to configure, so we're building this now, but say you want to come back to here, this is the configuration. You can change the name, you can, change the description, add more instructions. You can add more of files you want to upload just to kind of continuously tweak this as you're using it. So let's tweak that they did not provide feedback. So Katie, I just saw your question. Yes, I do have the students download their interaction and they upload it into Canvas so we can review it. And it's only on Chat GPT Plus. I swear it could spell. So let's write a question for infectious disease. Provide an answer A through E, highlight the correct answer, and provide a rationale for each of the answer choices provided. Right? And again, the great thing with ChatGPT, you don't always have to spell correctly. So this will go in there. So here's an example. Let's see if they did a good job this time. What do we think of the question? I think that's not a bad question.
It's good to me. Yeah.
I think that looks like a great question, right?
It was
Let's
a big improvement from the early training.
Yeah. And again, like David said, like inputting more information on how to better itself really makes a difference with what your chat is built out at later. Um, some of the chatbots I've worked on, a little bit at a time because every time I use it, okay, I need to improve it here. I need to improve it this way. Let me add this kind of information to feed it more how I want to direct it. So now if we look here at the rationale, it tells us what was wrong and what was correct, and it provides that rationale as well.
One thing I would mention is, they often talk about like garbage in, garbage out. Well, quality in, quality out. And one way to force high quality is to force it to create rationale, because then it has to wrestle with the creation of the question in the context of providing the rationale. And so it's actually a really good way to improve the quality of the questions is to force it to create rationale.
And I would think that in your prompting of it or your instructions, you could force it to create the question, determine the correct answer, and provide rationale before it asks the question. Therefore, it would have to iterate or ensure the rationale is correct before asking the question even.
And then I also want you guys to be aware, like you should always check on these, right? Make sure that, this is not something I would just freely give out to a student right away, making sure that your chatbot really is giving proper rationale. This might be a great way for you to be like, all right, you're going to come for remediation. I'm going to give you 20 questions that I've assessed and I've looked at, and then can start that way, but then go into, okay, here's the chatbot, you can utilize this versus just really ad-libbing and giving this out to students right away. Because again, as ChatGPT is getting much more efficient on providing feedback and backup, I think always making sure that the feedback is correct. So the one thing I always like to do is put in what sources to use.
And Jessica, have you ever can you give it links as sources, or does it always have to be files?
No, you can link the sources too.
Nice. Or have it prioritize certain sources based on URLs and things like that, I suppose.
Yeah, you can put in a link. And even if like you're building, say, another chatbot to help you with writing an email, for example, you can put in all those types of links in there and be like, hey, write me an email and then bring up the topic that I found in this article to discuss. So if you put in that link, it can actually write an email that way. But in terms of just using references. So if we want to reference and have our students look at this reference, here's the reference. Like, I said, we preferred current. I said, here's current 2025. Use this as a reference, provide where this can be found in the reference. So that then a student can go and read up a little bit more on the area, and it can really facilitate their remediation and understanding of the topic.
Jessica,
Mm-hmm.
so how do you administer this to students? I mean, I use it myself, but how do you get it out of this system and into the students' hands to utilize it?
So in the beginning, I'm going to recommend that this might be a form where you create it and then provide it to the student. I still don't feel comfortable enough where, if this is a brand new chatbot, just giving it to a student without you working through it and making sure that this isn't refined. Has anybody used chatbots in the past? How have you used chatbots with your students if you have? I'm very hesitant in the beginning for sure when I have a chatbot.
Well, I've used it to develop questions,
Mm-hmm.
but I go through and I reference absolutely everything before I release them to make sure of the accuracy. I tweak it in case it doesn't have quite what I want in it. So I check everything. As a matter of fact, my institution just purchased Chat GPT for all the faculty, and I just got off of a webinar with them. They held webinars like every day for the next couple of weeks, and they talked about the hallucination aspect of Chat GPT and the need to check the accuracy. So it's for me that's a big thing is the accuracy and making sure that it's not generating something that's not efficient. So it's kind of good that I did that webinar and now I'm listening to yours because it's kind of ending them.
And the one thing I'll say, so like in all my things, I talk about the hallucinations and things like that. There's a wonderful little summary on GitHub that shows the leaderboard for hallucination rates. And basically, so if you're using GPT-4, you have a hallucination rate of 1.8%. I've started telling people it's just kind of progressively getting smaller. So I say the utility to a student with a 1.8% error rate is far above and beyond something that's going to be deleterious to their learning at this point. So when students ask me, should I be afraid of using ChatGPT to study or this or that? I say, well, you've got about statistically a 1.8% chance of it telling you something wrong. You feel like I have at least a 1.8% chance of telling you something wrong when you ask me something that I'm not a expert on? And the answer is always yes. So that's the way I approach that, at least when students come to me as far as use. And it's something to think about, like you said, Ruslan, with if we're going to implement it, and provide it to students.
And I agree with that. I think Cassidy brings up a great point. I mean, sometimes if it's not my specialty, I'm always like, maybe this is the answer. I'm not 100%
Let's look it up.
sure.
Yeah,
Let's look
exactly.
it up. Which is why I think it's important when you do start developing these chatbots, really putting it through the ringer, really making it, efficient. I'm hoping to start working with this coming semester with our students in the fall or summer if I can get some piloting students to do this in their third year that we can work on this to prepare them for the pants. I think it would be a great way to see if this chatbot works. I've never used this chatbot before. I'm literally creating it with you as we're going through this. So this is something I've always wanted to do and see if it's really efficacious for our students. So that's why it's great that even coming together as a team here today, like how else do we want to see, like David telling me, hey, what about putting this workshop document in here? That's such a great idea. Like, look how much more efficient it is at writing these questions. And I think that collaboration within, even just here will really because I can share, if someone has a page now, I can share this with you and I can share this chatbot where we can both work on this or a bunch of us can work on it to really perfect it and make it a better bot so that our students can really benefit from it.
Somebody asked, sorry.
So go ahead. Thanks.
Somebody had mentioned how would you forward this to students? And I played with this before there were the custom GPTs. And I was having students drop in like a chapter of something and taught them how to write questions. And instead of using it for assessment, it enabled them to use it for practice. And I saw a lot of improvements there. So the concept of, what do you do with some of these that are, maybe not completely baked? The fact that if you don't use them for assessment, it's a coaching tool.
Yeah, for sure. I think that this can be used for remediation or even just practice, which is why I'll like putting in EORs is the same thing because now the student can say, okay, so let me just put like, all right, we're testing it out again. We added some stuff. Here was some of the rationale that it gave. But again, it didn't give us the reference tool. So I have to again say, don't forget to add the references from current for it to follow up with. But here are your questions again with the rationale. And this is a great tool for students who are like using it for practice questions that they can, I've already studied everything I can study. Let me throw out a few questions. Say your EOR is in internal medicine, write me a bunch of internal medicine EOR questions so that we can practice. Um,
So I'm going to play devil's advocate for you
oh, I
here.
love that.
Three things of concern. Copyright, okay? Because you're using copyrighted materials here to put in, whether it be pants or current pediatrics or whatever that material is that you're placing in there. Pants and panry, right? Are we really teaching now clinicians essentially how to game the system? Because now they'll have a chat bot that essentially they can just take the question from their panry if they take the panry LA, plug it into their bot, get the answer, and they're done. In which case, we're not promoting learning. And then the other thing that's already been touched upon is the error rate, right? So you say 1.8% error rate. Now, in the hands of somebody who's experienced, and I would say somebody like all of ourselves, that's not a huge problem. But in the hands of a new graduate physician assistant, they're not gonna know even that 1.8% error, right? And so that's going to become really problematic in terms of when they start to practice. Because if they happen to get that 1.8% error, then it's not a 1.8% error for the patient, it's 100% error. And those would be my concerns.
And I think they're all valid concerns. And I think we're all there, right? We don't really know in terms of copyright what is allowable, what isn't allowable. I think if it's public in terms of, the blueprint and things like that, I think those are okay because those are made public. Um, what the GPT itself has access to is public because I didn't put in a chapter, I didn't download a chapter from the book itself. I just said use this by this whatever, so whatever's out there and accessible is being utilized.
If it can find it, right?
If it can find it, right, it might say that was not a usable reference. But you're not wrong. I think those are all things that we are working on and figuring out with the copyright. And I think the last meeting we had was again, we talked about, what our policies are and whether or not this is allowable. And you're also right about the Panry LA. People can totally put that in there. And even for the pants, clearly they're not going to be able to utilize AI. But like, yeah, the Panry LA is another concern. And these are all things that hopefully can be addressed. But right now there's a lot that is in that gray zone, which kind of makes this really hard to navigate, you know? What about
Yep, I don't disagree. And
yeah,
I think it's just all I'm trying to do is bring up to me what are obvious points.
yeah.
I've done all of this work that you've done already, and thinking specifically about PAEA and rotation exams. I remember attending the workshop at the last conference here, and it was specifically said that you're not allowed to take the information outside of the room even. And so I thought about that when I was generating questions, and what it did for me was, in a way, it forced me to generate my own materials. And so I don't do PAEA specific, like I don't generate PAEA specific questions. What I do is I generate content,
Mhm.
and then I base my questions off of the content I've generated, right? So I can use the blueprint and the topics that the student is expected to know, because that's, like you said, that's common knowledge. Whereas the questions themselves, I'm not trying to, I am trying to mimic in a way, but I'm not using specific content from PAEA to
Well,
generate any of
and
the
you
questions.
and I think that's what the chatbot was prompted to do, right? Is to mimic
Yeah,
the style. It can't access anything within
right.
PAEA's end of rotation exam question block unless they have no,
Unless some student
data security, right?
inadvertently uploads
Um,
them.
I
Dave,
think
did
there's
you have
also
something quick?
examples online. So like those, I think these
Yeah.
are the examples that are online. So it's not taking material from Pants itself as much as like, hey, these are examples when you're taking your exam kind of thing. So maybe that's where it's coming from. I know David's had his hand up. So
So I have a couple of thoughts. I do remember hearing about some lawsuits that came forward regarding use of all the material that these large language models were trained on. Because what they've been doing is they've been exposing it to the corpus of information that's available from the history of the world. And so, for example, they would take current and then they would feed the LLM all of current's text. And so immediately you think, whoa, wait a minute. What about copyright? Are they allowed to share 10% of that to train the LLM model, that kind of thing? Well, they're doing the whole thing. And my understanding is that the lawsuit basically came back, and the result of that was that because it was basically completely new synthesis of material from the original source, it wasn't actually copying the material, that it was valid use. So that's my understanding up to this point. And so, of course,
And
you've seen these big tech companies, they continue to train these newer and newer models. They'll take the last 6 months of information and they'll feed them into the next training for the next model. So that's one piece that's really important to think about. The next thing I would say is, just because you asked it to use current whatever chapter doesn't mean it did. In fact, if it doesn't have login credentials to get into something that's online, then what it would do is it would access just basically like some of the introductory material of that chapter if it's available, but it wouldn't actually go and read through the whole chapter, but it would know what the chapter title is, and it would know some of the basic information. So then it would know kind of the general gist of what you would want to question about. But it doesn't mean that it would actually literally take the material from the entire chapter because it hasn't accessed it. Now, you can actually create things like, and this is getting sophisticated, but you can actually create custom actions that you can give it credentials that it can then log into stuff and scrape different websites and web pages and then use that material. But that's going a little bit deeper, and you'd have to create and you would actually even see in the configure area there's a place where you can actually configure some of that technology stuff. If you're a developer or a developer at your university, you could do those types of things. But what likely happened there is that link, I would guess, Jessica, if you went and clicked on that link, it may have just an introductory page to that access medicine area for chapter 32, whatever, but it probably doesn't have access to all of it. And so it does have the knowledge base that it was trained on, though. And so it takes it knows what current is. It knows it's a reputable source. It knows the general stuff that it covers. And so it can actually still do a great job of generating those novel items, but it's not specifically like taking, phrases and words from that chapter, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
And David made a good point
Cass.
too. Oh no, you go ahead, Dave.
Oh no, I said go ahead.
Oh, David made a good point about how fair use for education. So we're all educators, and while we're talking about utilizing something like this for educational purposes, like the NCCPA item writing workshop, it's copyrighted material. but when used for educational purposes, I mean, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not saying that it's okay for us to use copyrighted materials, but that's a great point that David made about about whether or not we can utilize these things. Should probably talk to lawyers to figure that out before we start trying to use them. But that's a great point because it's different for us as educators if we're using these for educational, if we're using materials for educational purposes, right? So it's interesting.
So I'm trying to copy something into the chat, but it's too long. But interestingly, I asked Copilot to just discuss fair use in AI. And I'll belabor you the point, it's just a few characters too long. But the main points that came out of this were talking about educational use of materials that we understand that under fair use, these materials can sometimes be used without explicit permission. We know that. There's a concept of transformative use, saying if AI systems use copyright content in a way that transform it, such as summarizing, analyzing, or creating new insights, it may qualify as fair use. Some of the limitations and challenges of the scope of fair use is not unlimited. For instance, large data sets of copyrighted material to train the AI have sparked the debates. And that's really at the center of really the question here. And the concept that OpenAI and Google are now arguing for broader fair use. And then beyond the legalities, organizations like Khan Academy are working on ethical frameworks around it. So bringing it up as a question is in that space because there's some things that we can see that are clear fair use, like we're using it there. But there's a lot of this stuff, and I won't even pretend to be a lawyer on TV. That's why I asked them the questions. But it sounds like a lot of the work we're using here is talking about transformative work.
And I
But
think,
that's something I would want to ask legal counsel.
right. And I think as you kind of outlined thank you, Copilot, like in the setting that we're talking about using this stuff, it's limited use for educational purposes and definitely transformative. I don't think anyone could argue that against any of those points. So I think in this case, but if you're, like you said, if you're going to large data sets and training your own large language model based off of, all of UpToDate's content or what have you, then you're going to get into the problems basically that these large language model companies are getting into on their own.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was
Yeah.
driving at, Casty, was that if you start using, like, if you start training it off of UpToDate or off of current, even, I would say, you are kind of stepping on toes because they definitely will have legal ramifications for that. And that was my concern, was that if you're using work like that, to be careful about what you do.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to discuss real quick is even though it says like you can put whatever 10 to 20 files, it still actually has a significant constraint. The average person that uploads 20 files is not going to hit that constraint because the files aren't going to be that big. But if you were to take extremely large PDFs or Word files, you would actually break the bank. So, if you were going to say, all right, I want to put the entire, all of the, big old manual full of, I don't know, questions. And then you're also going to put all of the accreditation standards, the entire manual, and you're going to hit that, what's called a context window pretty quickly. The latest models, the 4.0, some of these that are with ChatGPT, they have what's called a token window of 128,000 tokens. And so if you think of tokens, you think if you take 3/4 of that value, that's about how many words it can accommodate. So 128,000 tokens can accommodate about 100,000 words. And that's in the entirety of the thread that you are actually using. And so, for example, if you preloaded, 75,000 words, which is a significant size novel, well, then you'd have, 25,000 words left to play in your exchange. So most of the time it's not going to become an issue. But the point I'm trying to make is I couldn't go in there and I'm going to go into UpToDate and I'm going to create hundreds of UpToDate printouts PDFs, and then I'm going to load all of those into this system, and then now it has like a full library of accessing up to date directly. You wouldn't be able to do that. It would actually cap really quickly, and then you wouldn't be able to get the type of exchange that you wanted.
So I will tell you that Google Gemini just came out, 2.5 of access to the training model. It's like 1,000 times bigger than ChatGPT.
Yeah, they have a
So-
million tokens
Yeah.
for their
So-
one of their Flash versions,
Yeah,
and then
the Flash
one of their
2.5
Pro versions
version.
has 2 million tokens.
Yeah.
So yes,
Yeah.
that
So it's going in that direction. That's my point, is that
is potential
it is
there.
going to be that you pretty soon you're just going to be able to upload the entire thing.
Do a PDF
And
of your
that's-
entire curriculum, and here you go, student.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do just want to show that if I were to click here on Access Medicine, it actually makes me log in, right? Which is what Dave was trying to get at, so that it really doesn't access it specifically. It does say if you need more, if you want to see where this is referenced from, you got to go here. So you do still require to have an actual login.
And so that really is a hallucination, because it knows what you're talking about,
Mhm.
and it knows how to generate the question, and it has enough context of understanding of what current is, because it's been exposed to it to know like the chapter and things, but
Wow.
it's not actually digging in and creating and generating a question from that specific material in real time. It's still using the big, massive corpus of information that it's had in order to just construct it through a statistical
The
means
table of
constructing
contents
words.
that it got access to, right? Somewhere
Mhm.
else on the internet. All right. I unfortunately, I'm going to cut us off. I have 5 minutes left, but I want to steal a little bit of your time and our time to talk with you guys about a meeting that I had with PAEA Friday. So they reached out to me. Yes, I'm going to make the recording available, Katie. PAEA reached out to me around CASPA, so around admissions. So we've all, in reviewing all of the applications, we see the little, I promise I've not used ChatGPT or any other AI model to do anything in my application. And they want to change that. Yay, PAEA. So
Yeah.
basically, they've asked for me and other interested parties to meet with the CASPA steering committee to talk about, basically to provide insight and knowledge around AI, basically. I met with them on Friday and basically told them I think I would be happy to bring it to the group. I think they're probably going to have policy drafts and recommendations they might want us to review. In talking with them, they're working on this for the 2027 cycle, so it's finalized by October of this year. So there's time. But if anyone's interested in joining me to meet with the CASPA steering committee, my goal is for us to just be, well, for me personally, I don't want to get involved in writing policies at all. But I think people in this group, we can talk about what we know about AI, and then the CASPA steering committee can take that information in order to draft the policy they want, taking all the other legal stuff into advisement. So if people are interested in participating in that, feel free to send me an email or a message on the professional learning community, or you can direct message me on the chat here, and I'll mark you down. And then once they contact me to schedule that meeting with the steering committee, I'll reach out and see who's available and get that set up. Okay. So yay, PAA is moving forward. They also talked about 1,000 different things that they also wanted us to do. And I kind of slowed them down a little bit doing, member surveys and everything else. But so I think they're going to start trying to utilize us and move forward with different AI initiatives at the PAEA level, which I actually thought was a really great thing. So they're starting with admissions and moving on from there. So I just wanted to let everybody know about that. And then with that, I think we've got a couple minutes left. And yes, Melissa, research opportunities. Oh my goodness, yes. All of this, like Jessica said, she's doing pilots and everything else. And I'm hoping that once this gets put out, it'll be a paper that I can read about in PAEA. And I've so many research things. Like I said, I have 3 weeks left, and then I get to start thinking about research again. Once I get through my didactic period, and I've got a couple months to breathe. So yeah, lots planned, and I'll probably be posting, looking for collaborators for one of the projects that I'm thinking about on the PLC. So feel free if anyone is ever, if you guys are working on research projects or thinking about research projects, I'd love to use that PLC for us to build onto and with each other as we move forward. So.
And if anybody wants to work on this chatbot together, feel free to reach out. That would be really fun to collaborate with people because I've been doing this by myself and I'd love input.
I'll
Yep.
contact you, Jessica, for
Oh,
sure.
I love that.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it'd be great to get different perspectives. It's really great.
So I was going to just add one thing, Cassidy, and that's that I think that what ChatGPT has done for us, at least in my experience in working in academia, it's given us an opportunity kind of similar to the cell phone, where we can leapfrog essentially the opportunity that was not there before, meaning that it feels like we're about 10 to 20 years behind in terms of the technologies that we use. AI allows you to catch that up very, very quickly, but that window is going to disappear, right? Because what we see, and maybe I'm a little bit biased as I've been in like higher realms of leadership positions. What I would say is that we should definitely use this as PAs to be able to create the opportunities for our next generation to move into leadership type positions within the IT realm, right? You see, there's a chief nursing informatics officer, there's a chief medical informatics officer. I've been up all the way to those levels and then been basically partitioned off and told that no, I didn't have MD after my name, and therefore I was not capable of being a chief medical informatics officer, despite the fact I'd been doing it for 2 or 3 years prior to that. Right? That's the kind of backlog that I don't want to see when I see the opportunity, because we are very capable of doing these types of positions. There's not, because you're an MD, did not qualify you as a database engineer. I've been a database engineer. I know all that stuff. Many of you here have done a lot of things with languages, etc. You are qualified to do these kind of jobs. And we should be trying to advocate and get ourselves to the table so that we can do these things.
All right. Well, I'm going to respond to a few more things in the chat, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So it's 2:01. I'll try and respond to some chat stuff, or if you had questions, feel free to stay on and I can just answer you directly. The recording, as soon as I've got it, Zoom processes it. And my OneDrive can save it. I'll post a kind of a link and a summary of our meeting, and then on the PLC. And those links are limited to 2 weeks right now, just because of how my IT department limits my sharing to outside people. So they're good for about 2 weeks after I post them. And I'm actually working with PAEA to see if there's a way that I can get these recordings posted in more of a permanent fashion, but the files are too big to go in the PLC. But I'm working on it, and I'll see if I can get something figured out, hopefully in the future, so that we can have all the recordings from these meetings available for people. Kind of, if you come in and you want to start back at the beginning, you can kind of catch up with the group. So I'm working on it, but haven't figured it out quite yet. So, but thanks everybody, and thanks for coming, and thanks Jessica for the awesomely informative and super cool. Can't wait for the next 3 weeks, and I can start playing around too. So have a great day, everybody.
All right. Take care. Thanks, Cassidy.